No one is here. No one is here to help you or hear you. You are all by yourself, just you and your mind. Around the world, there are places full of colorful lights, noises, and voices, very lively and busy. And there are places of emptiness, no shiny, colorful lights, and only noises of the wind, just emptiness. Only it remains is the history of what once was. This is the world's unsettling ghost towns.
$20,000 people. 20,000 people. 2 months ago, I was celebrating 20 subscribers, but now 20,000. Thank you so much to each person who have subscribed. So I was celebrating 20 subscribers way back in July 4th, and I forgot that I had these champagne party poppers that I forgot to use. So I'm gonna use them right now. So actually, I'm kind of scared, but fuck it. Shit. If you haven't subscribed and it's your first time watching a video by me, then I highly suggest you watch till the end so you can decide whether to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed or this is your first time watching a video by me, then I highly suggest you watch until the end so you can go ahead and think about subscribing. If I'm right, then I just released my first gaming video on this channel, so if you would rather watch something funny, then you could go ahead and watch that instead. Anyways, I'm gonna shut up and let's just get into the video. I hope you enjoy. Starting off with the most tragic ghost town on the list, Oradour-sur-Glane, France.
In west central France, there lays a memorial that's been untouched for over 75 years. A memorial that used to be a village, Oradour-sur-Glane, but one day destroyed. That day was June 10th, 1944. 4 days after D-Day, a historical World War II event when the Allies invaded Nazi-occupied France. A commander of a battalion, Adolf Deichmann, sealed off Oradour-sur-Glane, trapping 643 civilians, 248 women, 190 men, and 205 children. The battalion first gathered its population at the fairground to, in a humane way, target random civilians. The women and children were all locked inside of a church. Next, the men were split and separated into 6 locations and were tortured by aiming at their legs and was set ablaze when they weren't able to move. Only 6 managed to escape, but 1 was caught. Meanwhile, the entire village was looted. Finally, the battalion set an incendiary device beside the church and ignited it. Some of the women and children tried to escape through windows, but were met with only 1 woman escaped. The village was soon set on fire. Only 6 civilians survived. No children did. After 3 hours of the brutal sequence of events, 20-year-old Raymond Murphy was an American B-17 when it was shot down. When he came across the village, he witnessed the hellish aftermath. In his report, when he flew back to England, he described what the burned village looked like. About 3 weeks ago, I saw a town where some 500 men, women, and children had been by the Germans. After the war, General Charles de Gaulle decided the village should never be rebuilt in the same area and should become a memorial. Burnt buildings, rubble everywhere, burnt cars. Watches stopped at the exact same time the owners were burnt, and small bicycles everywhere. The survivors were allowed to bury the deceased days after the cruelty event. A new village was built after the war, just northwest of the original village, where over 600 lives were lost from Dijkman's battalion. Dijkman's life would later end just 19 days after his brutal command to destroy the innocent lives of Orodusha clan.
This place is one of the few ghost towns I want to visit because it looks so unique.
On Xingshan Island, east of Shanghai, there's a village straight out of a fairy tale called Hu Tu Wen. Once populated by thousands of fishermen in the 1980s, now it's been reclaimed by nature, making the empty houses and roads turn to green. But what happened? Well, not much is known. Only two reasons why in the 1990s fishermen started moving out are due to problems with education and food delivery.
Thankfully, this village doesn't have a tragic ending. It does leave an unsettling vibe. While the scenery is rather calming, but still you can see the darkness in these abandoned homes through the windows, having anyone who visits this village feel like they are being watched.
From 1936 to 1939, Spain was going through a civil war between the Republicans and the Nationalists. A revolt made up of fascist nationalist generals of the Spanish army in 1936 was the immediate cause of the war, but unexpectedly, large parts of Spain rebelled against them, defeated or subsumed local armies, and carved out regions of opposition. This opposition comprised of the Spanish Republican government and an alliance of anarchists, socialists, and communists would fight for control of Spain until the fascist nationalist victory of 1939. Just southeast of Zaragoza lies Belchite, directly on the front lines between the two armies. On August 24, 1937, around 7,000 nationalist defenders resisted the Republican army until September 7th in the surrounding town when Republicans took it. The Republicans held Belchite until nationalist forces, then led by General Francisco Franco, retook it in 1938. Franco decided not to demolish the nearly completely ruined town, leaving it instead as a monument to the war.
A new town of Belchite wasn't completed until 1954, leaving residents with a choice to continue living in this destroyed town for 15 years. Franco calls it a living monument of war.
This ruined city once had a population of over 30,000 people, but today, zero. Nagorno-Karabakh, a mountainous, landlocked region inside the borders of Azerbaijan, has been a source of dispute since before the creation of the Soviet Union. The dispute between the two countries stems from unresolved border conflicts. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, Christian-majority Armenia and Muslim-majority Azerbaijan were constituent republics of the USSR from 1920 until its dissolution in 1991 and became independent countries. In Azerbaijan, Akhtan was the scene of a brutal conflict during the 1980s and to early 90s, known as the First Nagorno-Karabakh War. It was an ethnic and territorial fight between the majority ethnic Armenia and the Republic of Azerbaijan. According to Human Rights Watch, Armenian forces seized Akdam in July 1993. As the city fell, its entire population fled eastward. During their offensive against Akdam, Karabakh Armenian forces committed hostage-taking, indiscriminate fire, and the forcible displacement of civilians. After the city was seized, it was intentionally looted and burned under orders of Karabakh Armenian authorities. Unfortunately, this conflict was known as the First Nagorno-Karabakh War, which ended in 1994 and resulted in an Armenian victory and a ceasefire agreement. From 1994 until 2020, deadly incidents including drone attacks and heavy weaponry on the front lines and activities of Special Operations Forces presented a risk of reigniting another war. On September 27, 2020, after 26 years, another war broke out when Azerbaijan launched an offensive attack across the line of contact held by Armenian forces. This war lasted a little over a month until again a ceasefire agreement was made, but this time an Azerbaijan victory. As for Akdam, as part of the agreement that ended the 2020 war, the town and its surrounding area were returned to Azerbaijani control on November 20. Shortly after the return, the cleanup of the city began. The government predicted that it would take 2 to 5 years for people to be able to live in the city again, and that the last landmines will be removed in 50 years. So for now, Akdam is currently being rebuilt, and soon will be repopulated.
Although that is good news, there are still ongoing clashes between the two countries, with many civilians being caught in the middle of the heavy fighting and the drone attacks. Rest in peace for the innocent lives lost in this everlasting clash. Last one here on the list, and if you enjoyed this video while eating your lunch or dinner, then please consider subscribing, as that will help me in the small channel. You can make your final decision once we go through the world's unsettling ghost town and the infamous abandoned city, Pripyat, Ukraine.
Located near the border with Belarus, Pripyat is an abandoned city in Ukraine. Some may not be familiar with the name, but most likely know the name Chernobyl.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
There is some information coming from the Soviet Union tonight, some but not much. United Press International in Moscow reached some residents of Kiev by phone. Kiev is roughly 60 miles from the site of today's nuclear accident. According to these reports, all bus service in the city of Kiev has been stopped so that the buses can be used to evacuate those in the disaster area. From the Hungarian capital of Budapest.
Before the disaster that occurred in 1986, Pripyat was founded in 1970 and served as a closed city, a city with travel or residency restrictions that a person needs an authorization to enter. Pripyat was a closed city to serve the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The population was almost 50,000 up until disaster struck. On April 26, 1986, at around 1:28 a.m., a test run began in the power plant. The test is supposed to determine whether, in the event of a power failure, the plant's still spinning turbines can reproduce enough electricity to keep coolant pumps running during the brief gap before the emergency generators kick in. Unfortunately, ironically, the test brings about the power plant's destruction. With the high levels of radiation spreading across Chernobyl and Pripyat. Over 100 and possibly more coming people have passed away as decades pass. Sadly, Pripyat was not immediately evacuated. The civilians went about their business completely oblivious to what had just happened. However, within a few hours of the explosion, dozens of people fell ill. Later, they reported severe headaches and metallic tastes in their mouths. along with uncontrollable fits of coughing and vomiting. It was not until 36 hours later that the authorities ordered a temporary evacuation. At first, they thought a 3-day evacuation would do, but soon it became permanent. 2 days after the blast, radiation levels set off alarms at the Forsmark nuclear power plants in Sweden, 620 miles away from the Chernobyl plant. The Swedish government contacted the Soviet Union to ask if there happened to be a nuclear accident, but at first they denied it. But what later admits there was, after the Swedish government suggested they were about to file an official alert with the International Atomic Energy Agency. The Soviet armies established an exclusion zone around the site of the Chernobyl plant, just around 20 miles away. It was formed to restrict access to very dangerous and hazardous areas, to reduce any spread of radiological contamination, and to monitor ecological activities. For Pripyat, it is allowed and a kind of safe area to visit, as a lot of companies offer tour guides around the ghost city. In most places in the city, the radiation levels are at a healthy and stable range, but until around 20,000 years from now, will Chernobyl be safe to visit and possibly live in. For 36 years, Pripyat stayed frozen in time. Only nature is starting to eat up the entire city. Less than 100 people live in the ghost city, and most likely that number will reduce to 0 as time goes by. We'll just have to wait 20,000 years.
This has been the world's unsettling ghost towns. I hope you enjoy, and now is the time to decide to subscribe for more or not. Share this video with others who would enjoy this video, as that will definitely help me, and it will really mean a lot to me. Once again, if you guys are interested, I just uploaded a gaming video at the same time, so if you want to watch that, then you go ahead and watch that. I'm gonna slowly branch out to other types of videos, but don't worry, I will continue making morbid topics. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, bye.
Attention everyone living in Guapo County, please evacuate area due to a highly radioactive smelly fart has impacted the entire town.